Hey everybody, and welcome back to TechStrong Unplugged. I'm your host, Natan Solomon, and this is episode 27 of our series. In this episode, we're taking you to AI Dev Summit 2024. There, our co-host Cassandra Chen met up with Justin Schroeder, the founder of FormKit, and they discussed creativity in software development. Daniel also highlights the parallels between coding and music and reveals how FormKit is tackling complex form-building issues. Without further ado, let's head over to AI Dev Summit.
Welcome back to TechStrong Unplugged. My name is Cassandra Chin, and today we're here with Justin.
Nice to see you, Cassandra.
Yeah, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name's Justin Schroeder. I am a founder of a company called FormKit, and we basically try to take the pain out of building forms. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you got into tech, or maybe even before that?
Sure. Yeah. So my background is I grew up in Europe. I obviously don't sound like it because my parents were American, so I lived there until I was 18 or 19. I got some advice from someone when I was trying to decide what to do with my life. And it was basically along the lines of do whatever you want, just follow your heart kind of stuff, which is actually terrible advice. So I was like, well, I've always wanted to fly planes since I was a little kid. So that's what I did. I moved to the States for college to Texas, and I went and I got a degree in aeronautical science, and I went and flew planes for several years. Which does sort of sound like fun and magical, but it turns out it's actually an incredibly non-creative thing. Creative pilots are dead. So at some point when I was on one of these projects, I got married and I was gone. I'd get sent away for a month or two at a time. We had just gotten back from a honeymoon. I'd been gone then for a month. I got back and they were about to send me away again to Chile for a couple months. And I was like, I think I'm going to change my career now. And computers had always been a hobby. And I had been programming, really since I was 12, I think, but not professionally, just for fun. I'd create little websites or things like that. And so I decided, I'm going to try to make this actually a career. And I was 13 years ago, something like that. And so, yeah, I ended up getting my first job in the space, and it's been a real joy. I think one of the things people don't realize about being a software engineer is it is incredibly creative. And so that is something that's totally missed. When I go and I tell people, I write software, their eyes just kind of glass over. You could not possibly say anything more boring than that. Say less. Stop talking. But the reality is for people watching who are maybe sort of getting into it, once you actually start and you start the complexity of the syntax of programming, whatever, sort of melts away a little bit, you're left with almost an expression of whatever is in your mind. I like to think about it almost like playing the piano, where at some point when you're a good pianist, you stop thinking about which keys you're pressing and you start just making the music. And that's a really beautiful place to get to. And it doesn't take that long. Even a new developer can get to that place, in probably just a matter of months. So it's worth pursuing. Yeah.
That's a really good analogy to music.
Yeah. Do you play?
A little bit. I used to do violin.
Okay. There's a huge overlap I've noticed between software engineers and musicians. I did when I was a little kid, but I have this reoccurring dream where I'm like a virtuoso and I sit down at the piano and I'm just enjoying it. And the only thing in real life that's not a dream that makes me feel that way is programming, because I can sit down and it's just whatever's in my mind can sort of start to come out. That's sort of the romantic part of being a software engineer, I think, is there is some joy and beauty and creativity to it that I don't think people realize when they're on the outside,
Do you want to talk more about the software engineering you do now?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm a founder in this company called FormKit, which is, it's a company, but it's really just an open source project that we're trying to figure out how to sustain. So that's the company part of it. But essentially, we've been writing I've been writing programs for, a couple decades now. And in the process, at some point, we started to realize all of our time is going to building the forms. It doesn't even matter if it's a desktop application or it's a web application. At the end of the day, a form is how we present a user with a way to interact with the computer.
Can you describe what exactly a form is?
Sure. So anything you type into the computer, basically, almost exclusively, like a form for ordering some pad thai or a form for, booking a ticket to come to a conference. All of those are web forms, or they could be iOS forms or something like that. But essentially, you're presented with some fields to fill out. You got to fill them out. And it's amazing how unsolved the problem is, because at first blush, it seems very simple. If you were writing HTML, you'd do something like input type text, and now you have a form on the page, somebody can type into it. That's very simple. But there's this whole litany of other requirements that end up getting built on top of that. For example, you need to provide like a label to say what that form input is. Hey, this is the first name field. Okay. Turns out you can't just put some text there. They need to be semantically linked. So you need a way to say, this is the label for this field, right? That's a very basic example, but then maybe you want to add some help text. Maybe you want to add some validation. Maybe this form works in more than one country, so you need internationalization on top of that, so you can translate the validation messages or the labels or things like that. And it just spirals out of control and complexity. And then your boss comes to you and says, hey, actually, the conference registration form that you wrote, people really want to be able to like book multiple attendees. They want to be able to like add a new person, and book have a form where they book all of the people in their organization. And as soon as somebody says anything like that, the complexity 10x's. It becomes unbelievably hard to actually write that form. And so everybody is solving this independently right now in almost every arena. It doesn't matter if you're in the React space or the Vue space or the web space or you're programming in Rust. I mean, like everybody is coming up with their own solutions for sort of how to try to integrate these things. And sort of the idea behind FormKit is we need a standard architecture for how to deal with it. And so that's sort of what this is providing.
I can think of a lot of frustrating experiences with forms.
Yes, right? Like you have you ever been on a forum and you like click the button to buy something and it's like, no. And you can't figure out why, you can't submit the form. It's, oh man, there are so many horrible experiences like that. Yeah. We were buying tickets to go to Europe a couple months ago, and there was a date picker. You had to pick the date in your passport. Well, when the airline wrote that form, they're using the browser's time to select the date. So I select a date. Let's say it's May 11th, something. I'm in the U.S. when I do that. Well, it turns out, depending on what time of day it is, that's going to be a different day in Europe because of time zone. Even though I'm picking a date in 1987, it's still a different day. So we would fill the form out, we'd click the submit button, and the date would be different. It'd be different than what we picked. So eventually, like we finally like realized this. We're just consumers, just trying to buy a ticket. We realized we had to like put in the wrong date of our passports just to get it to accept the right date. And this kind of stuff happens all the time. And it's because everybody has to recreate the wheel every single time. So we're trying to kind of solve that problem. That's what we're tackling. Yeah.
Hopefully you guys solve that problem.
Hopefully we solve it. Yeah. I think we're getting pretty close. Yeah. Yeah.
And you said like you've had a passion for websites.
Uh-huh.
Do you want to talk more about it?
Sure. Yeah. When I was a kid, I think I wrote my first program when I was 12 or something like that. And at the time it was written in BASIC, which doesn't really exist anymore, but it's actually a great way to learn programming. You're only allowed to like one operation per line, and all the lines are numbered. And at the end you click it and it runs, and for a kid, it was a great way to do it. But what bothered me about it was there was no way for me to take that and then distribute it or like give it to somebody. Like I couldn't show off to my friends, basically. I wanted to be like, look what I did. Couldn't do it. And I don't exactly remember like who turned me on to this, but somebody said, oh, you could create a website. And I had no idea what that even meant. But, back then I probably used Yahoo because I don't even think Google existed yet. And I went and found some way to basically open up like Notepad and type HTML. And I made a website. And, back then to deploy a website, you would just drag a file into an FTP thing and it would upload it. And then you had a website. I mean, it was very simple. Technically, it still works the same way today, although we've made it seem really complicated. And that was so empowering to feel like I just typed some text in here. And now, I can go to school and tell my friends, go to this website. I made that. Pretty cool. And then somebody, this would have been in, 1998. So JavaScript had just been introduced. And I realized, I could actually write code and make it do stuff in the browser. And then it was sort of off to the races after that. I just absolutely loved the experience. And I think that even today, even though we've added a lot of complexity to the web, it is the only platform where you as a single person, as a tinkerer, can actually build something that's valuable to other people. It's very hard to do that with desktop programming. The number of times where I actually use an app on my phone or on my desktop computer that was made by one or two people is almost zero. Most of those programs are Adobe Photoshop or, some complex software. There's only a few of them I can think of that are really teams of one or two people. And that's not true on the web. The web is a place where individual people create value all the time and are able to sell that value and get compensated for their time. And so there is something magical about that space that I think is worth people looking into.
I see a lot of artists post their own work on their own website. Yeah. And whenever I see it, I'm really amazed that they can have their own site and they really customize it.
They made that site somehow, And I mean, it's getting easier and easier to make websites because there are some great tools out there where you don't even need to know, code. You could just do Squarespace or something like that. And that's great too. But yeah, I know a lot of artists who create incredible artwork and then publish it on websites that they've designed themselves. And that is really, really neat. And nobody's doing that for desktop class applications. It's not really a thing. Yeah.
Do you have a preference for website frameworks?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm a big Vue diehard. So we're at VueConf right now. I'm a big fan of Vue, in particular, the fact that it's sort of the last independent open source big web framework. So
you just said the last. This is literally the only one and the last one? This
is the only one. Independent. Yeah, so React is created by Facebook. Svelte is created by a guy named Rich Harris, who's a really great guy. But him and his entire team have gotten hired by Vercel. Let's see. Who is behind? I'm not sure. I think Netlify is where Ryan Carnado works, but I could be wrong about that. From Solid. But yeah, basically all of the major frameworks. Angular is Google, obviously. So all of the major frameworks are coming out of large corporations, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm grateful to the world that they exist. I'm grateful to those companies. But there is something unique about Vue because it's created by essentially glorified hobbyists who have done it for the love of the game. And some of them aren't even compensated for their work, really. They're just doing this out of absolute passion. And it's interesting because right now in the industry, we're starting to see most of the new innovative tools are coming out of this little ecosystem. So even if you're going to be building an application in React or Svelte or with Remix or all of these, big web frameworks, they're going to be, the underpinnings are from the Vue community. They're going to use things like Vite and Nitro and, Shiki or 2/, a bunch of these different tools that are coming out of the independent Vue ecosystem. And it's the last bastion.
And it's a really nice community then.
It is a really great community. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really grateful for all the friends that we've made here over the years. Yeah.
I think we've had a really good chat today.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.